Hi, this is Professor Marsh, and this is Business Ethics, Unit 6, which means it's Chapter 5 in your textbook. Uh, Going to get started by talking about the information at the beginning of the chapter. There is a cold opening regarding Facebook, and that's something that's been in the news a lot just in the last several weeks. And just note that the uh, narrative that's in the book, which is based on the Mueller special counsel investigation and the congressional hearings about the 2016 campaign, uh, now appears to be a false narrative. And there's other investigations which are in the process of correcting that narrative. Note that Facebook's corporate mission is a complete conflict of interest. How can you protect users when you're selling all of their data to advertisers to target them? And also note the quotes at the beginning of the chapter, but don't dwell on them. Sir Adrian Cadbury's is probably the only one that is honest. Did you ever see the movie Dead Poets Society? On the first day of English class, Robin Williams' character tells his students to rip out the short passage about how to mathematically calculate the value of a poem. Well, don't rip out the pages on the Facebook opening, but just realize that Facebook's many conflicts of interest in their business model are not limited to the largely incorrect facts presented in the cold opening. And you should definitely leave the questions on page 142 in the book. These are important ethical questions. Read them each carefully. Uh, Mr. Zuckerberg just took another trip to Capitol Hill, as did one of his former subordinates, to recommend that all political content on Facebook be screened for incorrect narratives, which appears to be any narrative with which the majority party in Congress disagrees with. It's a truly un American and chilling attempt to respond to a serious conflict of interest with an unconstitutional solution. The government directly monitoring and censoring all speech on the largest internet platforms. In the former Soviet Union, which I'm old enough to remember, incorrect speech was any speech which didn't advance socialist society on the way to pure communism. We don't want to go there. Facebook promises privacy and protection while it sells your data and requires you to give the intellectual property rights to all of your data, your comments, your ideas, your photographs, including those drunken photos, to them at Facebook forever for free. Let me tell you, nothing is free. Facebook monetizes the data to the highest bidders, who are then free to target you. I would add to the list of questions, what responsibility does Facebook have for their indirect but possibly illegal political contributions? Facebook claims to be a neutral platform, but doesn't this activity make Facebook a publisher and not just a platform? Okay, the chapter objectives for Chapter 5, Unit 6, are to define corporate social responsibility, to distinguish the key components of the term responsibility, to describe and evaluate the economic model of corporate social responsibility, describe and evaluate the stakeholder model of corporate social responsibility, describe and evaluate the integrative model of corporate social responsibility, explain the role of reputation management as motivation behind CSR. CSR is the abbreviation for corporate social responsibility, uh, and evaluate the claim that CSR is good for business. This is another very meaty chapter, although shorter, so we'll cover it in one unit. But there are a number of important points. The first is getting comfortable with the term corporate social responsibility, and we'll often abbreviate that to CSR, uh, and what CSR might mean in various organizations and corporate cultures. How do we distinguish CSR from mere words, what you might call lip service or virtue signaling, showy but empty acts to look good? We want our ethical organization not just to look good, but to be good, or the whole deal could unwind. We'll introduce three models of CSR: the economic model, the stakeholder model, and the integrative model. And then we'll finish up with the topics of reputation management and benefits of CSR to the organization. So let's start by defining corporate social responsibility, your first objective for the chapter. Corporations have rights to political speech, to due process, to be free from government mandates which violate employees' religious beliefs, and corporations have responsibilities also. CSR refers to the ethical expectations that society has for business. Social responsibility is what a business should or ought to be for the sake of society, even if this comes with an economic cost. And this is on page 146. There are two recent uh, United States Supreme Court cases. The Hobby Lobby case on freedom from religious impositions caused by governmental regulations, and Citizens United recognizing a right of political speech by corporations that are responsible for the recognition of these corporate rights, but they're also corporate responsibilities. Let's distinguish the key components of the term responsibility. At the lowest level, don't cause harm. I think about the Mod Squad in the book and movie, Thank You for Smoking. The Mod Squad from Thank You for Smoking by Christopher Buckley. MOD stood for Merchants of Death, MOD, and meetings of lobbyists in D.C., the lobbyists for the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry, and the firearms industry. Can products be potentially harmful but still ethical? In the climactic scene of the book and the movie, the tobacco lobbyist, played by Aaron Eckhart, says that if his kid makes an adult decision with all the available information and wants to smoke cigarettes, that he'll buy him his first pack. He also shames the William H. Macy character, not for bribing the University of Southern California to admit his kid, but no, as part of the plot, William H. Macy is a senator from Vermont and shames him for being a tool of the Vermont cheese lobby, since Vermont cheese is a potential cause of obesity, diabetes, and coronary artery disease. I think you're going to have to make this decision for yourself. Then the book discusses the potentially unprofitable Merck drug, Mectizan, and its prevention of river blindness in the poorest parts of the developing world. Does Merck have an obligation to accept the loss to produce it when it could be devoting its capital to more profitable products? You see, this drug, you give it one dose to people in the poorest part of the world, and it cures their river blindness. It protects them from that condition, that horrible condition. But people in that region can't afford to pay the full price that's necessary to recover the cost of development and production of this relatively unique drug. So what is Merck's obligations here? That's an interesting question. We talk about the various corporate responsibility and their statements of their mission and what their goals are. Do we really believe that Ben and Jerry's ice cream makes the world a better place? Maybe yummier, but I'm not sure it's better. I'm not sure we make the world a better place by making people fat, making billions of dollars for yourself, and giving millions each year to left-wing, and we're talking socialist, really, causes. Newman's Own isn't in your book. This is the Paul Newman spaghetti sauce and salad dressing company, but it sends all of its profits to charity, admittedly liberal ones, but those that for the most part are putting people getting healthy nutrition and living healthily and safely ahead of political ideology. Note that for many traditional conservative economists and business writers, they believe that the social responsibility of business is to maximize its profits, and nothing beyond that, as long as they follow the law. That is still largely orthodoxy for the Milton Friedman free market advocates. However, doing some CSR activity may be necessary in today's world in order to maximize profits in the long run. If you look like the greed is good Gordon Gekko, you may find yourself and your organization shunned by today's markets. Now let's look at the three models of CSR: the economic model, the stakeholder model, and the integrative model. The economic model of corporate social responsibility. It limits a firm's social responsibility to the minimal economic responsibility of producing goods and services and maximizing profits within the law. It's sometimes referred to as managerial capitalism, and it follows along in that Milton Friedman tradition. Note the confusion with short-term profits versus long-term wealth creation. Even if you're following the economic model of corporate social responsibility, the organization is going to want to focus on the latter, not the former. They want long-term wealth creation. And your CSR ethical profile, it'll drift towards some of the other models, and that's a good thing. So if you're focusing on the long term instead of the short term, you're going to avoid some of the profits. You're going to avoid some of the problems that short-term profit maximization can lead to. The stakeholder model of corporate social responsibility is a view that business exists within a web of social relationships. The stakeholder model views business as a citizen of the society in which it operates. And like all members of society, business must conform to the normal range of ethical duties and obligations that all citizens face. At a minimum, to respect human rights, but also duties to a range of stakeholders, not just stockholders. Take a look at the reality check on page 156. The Business Roundtable's 2019 statement on the purpose of a corporation. Now, the Business Roundtable is a very important and very influential organization. It is a lobbying group in Washington, D.C., which represents the interests of, basically the largest 100 or maybe, 200 or 300 corporations in America. And their board of directors, their executive committee at the Business Roundtable, are really some of the most important corporate directors in all of American business. And their decision to change their definition of the purpose of a corporation to a fundamental commitment to create value for all stakeholders, not just the owners of a business, is really a sea change in American business's view of CSR. The integrative model of corporate social responsibility says that CSR is fully integrated into some firms' missions or strategic plans. This is on page 157. Now, I would distinguish nonprofits, schools, hospitals, charities, advocacy organizations, trade groups, unions, all those sorts of things that are expressly mission and value based instead of profit driven. And I would also distinguish benefit corporations. Those are corporations whose charters legally permit the directors and managers to place the mission of the company over profits. So as far as their fiduciary duty to the stakeholders, they're excused from what might typically be considered to be a duty as directors to maximize profits. Note that corporate sustainability reports are increasingly common, and these provide stakeholders with information regarding a firm's economic, environmental, and social performance. Also, consider the box on page 159 regarding equal exchange, which supports fair trade coffee, tea, and cocoa farmers, which isn't the company that I discuss in Lecture 1-2A, which has clearly influenced a change in the way that coffee companies promote their products in the marketplace today. It's as though the developed world coffee sellers formed a union to protect their suppliers in the developing world. Does good ethics mean good business? There's, some yes and some no considerations. On the yes side, CSR related activities can improve profitability by enhancing a company's standing among consumers and employees. Ben & Jerry's employees feel that they are doing good, and they tend to be retained working for the company. It costs money to retrain or to train or retrain new employees coming in laterally. Starbucks can charge $5 for a coffee drink brewed from their fair trade purchases by $15 an hour baristas. So that's on the yes side as far as answering the question, does good ethics mean good business? But contrary to that, some businesses have good ethics like Procter & Gamble, but are still attacked as greedy SOBs by advocates and the media. Some businesses have most admired reputations and are ethically filthy, if we go back and look at the Enron example. So perception does not necessarily equal reality. As in all things, you will want to walk the walk as well as talk the talk, and do it constantly and consistently to keep a good reputation. Remember Warren Buffett's quote from the beginning of our textbook: it takes 20 years to create a good reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you get undeserved criticism, it's up to you to correct that impression and to do it appropriately and assertively. That is what's called reputation management, another defined term for our chapter, and is one of the most lucrative businesses in the world at the level at which it is practiced. Corporate public relations consulting is $1,000 plus per hour business among the Fortune 500 and the Forbes 400. And if you do a good job for one client under attack, you can expect calls from dozens more. That's the end of Unit 6. We are now halfway roughly through the book and just under halfway through the course. I see that this past week we've got to turn in midterms, so at least midterm grades. We will head into Chapter 6 and Unit 7 next week. We will move into a deeper look at ethical decision making in the context of employer responsibilities and employee rights. For those of you who have an interest in HR management or labor relations, this might be your most valuable chapter coming up. Until then, keeping up with your reading and your assignments, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.